Hi guys, I'm Shmi, and today we're going to take a look at an SUV. Now if you're a regular follower, you will know that's quite unusual, but there is a reason the Alfa Romeo Stelvio is sat behind me, and that is because I basically think this is the first pretty SUV, an SUV that actually looks good. So we're going to take a look around the car, talk all about it before going out for a short test drive. But first, let me start with what this is, how it represents Alfa Romeo, and what is going on. So you might remember from last year, I've driven the new Giulia Quadrifoglio. Well, in fact, I've driven it twice. That is quite a significant step for Alfa Romeo, and this is number 2. It's kind of a change in the way they're going, with all of their cars moving towards rear-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, new styling, and kind of a really bold return. So I'm looking forward to actually driving this car and sharing some thoughts about it with you. The Stelvio is the SUV. It takes what they learned from the Giulia, raises it up into that new format, but just looking at it, it's basically quite a pretty car. They've managed to make it actually look good rather than being a bit too clunky. Supposedly, as I'm going to discover when I drive it, it will drive pretty well too, because it's used things they learnt from Giulia in the car. So it's lightweight, lots of lightweight materials used, only 1,660 kilos for a 5-seat SUV. It's got the 2-litre turbocharged petrol engine, so 280 horsepower. And in future, there will be a Quadrifoglio version using the 2.9-litre twin turbocharged V6 for 510. But this is what we have for now. The Quadrifoglio is coming next year or later on this year, so we'll see that in future. The car, basically, from a design point of view, has that same kind of flair and styling and excitement to the sort of design of it, when traditionally, you know, an SUV wouldn't be that exciting. If we come around to the front, you've got the sort of distinctly Alfa Romeo front grille and the front lights to the car. But in terms of driving, one sort of fact I've just learned is that it actually has a carbon fibre prop shaft, something that was developed for the Quadrifoglio version of the Giulia, and this was Alfa's sort of design philosophy, that, or development engineering philosophy, that by starting at the top, they could develop things sort of in the best possible way and then filter those back through the regular range. So let's have a quick glance at the interior, where it's loaded with technology, features, equipment, keyless of course, hill descent control, lane assistance, guiding, front sensors, collision detection sensors, and generally sort of quite nice sort of finish and minimalistic design. So you can see the way the central screen is kind of neatly integrated into the dashboard. There are very minimal buttons and controls to look after everything, and you also have these elongated paddle shifters, which is such a cool touch from the sort of Ferrari engineering style, the team that, or previous guys who worked at Ferrari now working at Alfa Romeo, helping develop the sort of characteristics and driving style of the car. Things like the start-stop button being right there on the steering wheel. So from a driving point of view, it should be quite exciting, but equally, from a practicality point of view, you know, it's a big SUV. You've got decent rear legroom, more than enough. And if we come around to the back, you also have a big boot with a powerful tailgate, of course. We've got a couple of bags in here, but you can get a sense of scale of it. No problem with space, and then you've got a 40-20-40 rear folding seats, so you can fold all those back flat. Close that back down. So basically, it's a very well equipped, very nice looking car, and it's going to be interesting to see, well, how well it does, because certainly from a styling point of view, it's bang on where it should be. I think I should jump in and just fire it up, because we're going to take it for a short drive before I come back to show you a little bit more about the controls and infotainment and everything that you've got in here, and all of that side of things. I literally foot on the brake, start it up, and we're into life. That nice digital display in the centre. Oh, comfort access, so it's moving the seat for me, putting that back into my position. And yeah, when you're sat in here, it feels good. It feels sort of sporty, even just holding the steering wheel, seeing these paddles, the way they pop through, and the dials, sort of Alfa Romeo style, with this silver trim around the outside to accentuate them. So let's head off and see what it's about. Firstly, let's drive the car a little bit in the twisty bits, a little bump there. So in normal mode, it's quite smooth, and the car is very much set up, or that kind of created with a sporty background. And obviously the Quadrifoglio is going to be right at home when it's driving on the twisty roads. But even in this car, we've got the different drive modes, so let's put it into dynamic. You have natural to start, dynamic one way, and all weather the other way. It kind of sharpens everything. The gearbox drops a gear, becomes a little bit more aggressive. You get a small kick as well when you shift up towards the red line. Everything's sort of enhanced and made a little bit more sporty, which is of course exactly how I like it. Now, one of my favorite things is when you start pulling the paddle shifters. They are very, very Ferrari. They just scream Maranello all over them. You pull it, you've got that kind of quick shift, rev matched, instant excitement, a very, very nice kind of feel to it. It is really one of the highlights. And then when you put your foot down, coming out of the corner, away you go. Now 280 horsepower, 140 horsepower per litre of engine for the 2-litre engine. It's not a huge number, but it is clearly more than enough for this kind of car. It doesn't have too much by way of body roll, and that was one of the things that they made a big sort of amount of engineering work towards reducing to make the drive a little bit better. And you can feel that that's certainly paid off. It doesn't feel like a very big and heavy car. Obviously it's bigger than, say, a sports car, but certainly not compared to regular kind of SUVs, this kind of thing. And you've got that kind of driving characteristic, that sporty feel to it, which is really quite cool. So although, like I said, this might not be the normal driving environment for this kind of car, it certainly handles its own here, especially when you consider that, you know, it's a 5-seat SUV with a big boot, with a lot of space, a lot of storage and luggage capacity, and it revs away quite nicely too. So let's keep going and head on towards, I guess, a little bit more normal driving, going back into town. Now then, more town-like environment, and this is why SUVs have become so popular so quickly, because you have this kind of raised up viewing point, you can see out over the traffic, you have more kind of, obviously, well, more suspension travel, so a smoother ride, and especially in here on some horrendous roads right now, seems to be doing a pretty decent job riding gently. You don't need the bumpy road button. That's a sort of notable absence from the Quadrifoglio. There's no button, or from Ferraris I should say, there's no button to soften it up even more. I haven't gone down even into natural, and the ride is still gentle. I can see the revs have dropped, it's got a bit quieter, or into all weather, which will again make it even softer. So that's probably the mode you want to be driving in. There's a lot less throttle response immediately, I can tell, but just cruising around, it's comfortable, it's quiet, the seats are good, viewing is great. You've got some huge door mirrors which make it very easy to see everything, of course. Decent enough view back. You lose a little bit of the rear visibility for the slope line, that gives it that slight, like, more sporty look at the back and slightly more pretty stance to it. But that's a small price to pay in my mind. You've got a lot of creature comforts. If I go into the sort of settings and go to where you can control the different sort of safety, driver assistance things, you've got, well, as well as the obvious rear view camera stuff, you've also got speed limiter, forward collision warning, lane departure warning, blind spot monitoring. You get the point. Like, safety things galore available through that, and the way the screen is integrated is so neat, just very, very tidy. Driving along, not too many dramas. One thing I didn't talk about before, we've got hill descent control as well, so where you can be heading down a steep hill, and obviously the car will keep you at a consistent speed, it won't accelerate away from you. So it has a bit of off-roading capability, and those kind of characteristics too, but it's actually quite decently quiet, which is a nice thing. You might think there'll be all sorts of noises and failures on that front, but not too bad at all. Alrighty then, so I'm back outside the gates of Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, the home of Alfa Romeo, Fiat, Lancia, Jeep and Abarth. But let's take a little bit more of a look around some of this stuff and the sort of entertainment, infotainment, the settings, how it all works, all that kind of thing inside the car. And obviously the screen here is so neatly implemented, it fits naturally inside that kind of styling with this kind of wood look finish piece underneath it. That's controlled through the central system here, so menu would take you back to where we are. You've always got the ability to go in through your options and go through the different settings and things. Obviously all quite configurable. Back at the front you've got radio, media, phone, navigation, apps and settings. So in apps, a few things you can look at in here which are quite neat. My car, tyre pressures, maintenance information, oil level, that all works pretty well. Then go back, you go through each one of these various bits and bobs. So that all is a pretty neat system really. On the dashboard here, you've got similar kind of thing. You can go through different display screens using the button here on the end of the stalk. So the speedometer, your trip information, trip B, and G-force sensor, which is kind of cool to have that in there too. Obviously back there you've got your fuel economy stuff down at the bottom, current radio station up towards the top, temperature, and all that kind of info. So that's a nice little display sitting between the rev counter to the left and the speedometer over at the right. You've got your usual lights, seat controls, memory seats. The car is really nicely equipped. Heated door mirrors, a couple of seat controls down here. Excuse how dirty I've managed to make the car, but generally decent sized storage buckets for the doors. Behind here you've got some extra cup holders, pretty deep, slot. You can put your phone in there, some papers maybe, business cards. It's all very minimalistic. There are no more controls than you need. The park brake button, inside the armrest, your USB port and aux, and quite a lot of storage space. Decent sized glove box as well over that side, documents and things in there at the moment, but generally pretty well and nicely sort of finished and equipped. Focus up there on the roof so you can see the controls we've got up there. Everything else, so you can see the way it slopes back down towards the rear, but that's what makes it look so good from the outside. I like the embossed the Alfa logo there on the headrest. I think that's quite cool, and the seats generally have pretty good support and stability to them as well. Anything else I haven't mentioned? USB port, 12 volt socket, obviously your climate control with the vents right above, but all generally pretty neat and tidy. Works very nicely, functional. I'll just fire it off now. And there we go, all wrapped up. Door handle's pretty neat. That piece is a very nice finish, and then the seat moves backwards as soon as you open the door to make it a little bit more comfortable getting out. Make that step a little bit easier. So, overall, not a bad car at all, and a drive that's pretty enjoyable for an SUV. Quite sporty, but really I just wanted to show you a bit more around the car, what it's about, talk a little bit about it, the ins and outs, show you some things about the Stelvio, because like I said at the beginning, in my mind this is basically pretty much the first good looking SUV, the first car of this format that really does look nice, and it drives pretty well too. So a thorough recommendation for the Alfa Romeo Stelvio. Now I just look forward to driving the Quadrifoglio version in due course. So as always guys, thank you very much for watching. I need to hand back the keys now to this car, back over to the guys at Alfa Romeo. It's been an enjoyable day, and I hope you've enjoyed watching the video. Thanks again, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers.